Jesse and Amy Nolan.
Hi.
Hello.
Jesse, tell us about where we all met.
We had the privilege of meeting Rachel on board the Norwegian Epic when I was working for Blue Man Group as a drummer and a music director. So Amy came on and was just cruising for a while as a visitor, as a guest of mine, and that's where we all met because I had the privilege of being in the band with EJ.
What is it like to be MD of Blue Man Group?
I think the biggest challenge was, and then I think this is the biggest challenge in any artistic job, and it's often overlooked, but it's just the people. And I don't mean the people are challenging. I mean, you're at the center of a lot of relationships, both artistic, personal, musical, etc. And balancing the aesthetic quality of the work and the music, and also like what becomes a familial relationship with your cast members. On the ship, you have this nucleus, this family of people, and just maintaining that health of those people and their zeal and their passion for the show, you know, and that relationship. You know, for me, the musical part, that's easy. That's the easy part. That's the part where we go to work and we dig in and we all know what it's supposed to sound like, and we all, as a band, eventually, as we work together and as a cast, generate our own like version of the work. In this case, it's the Blue Man Show, and that was the most fun too. The people. I came up as a jazz musician, so improvisation was like the goal, right? Like you study the technique, you know, from a drumming standpoint, you study your rudiments, you're studying transcriptions, you're studying other players, but the goal is to ultimately weave that into an improvisatory language of your own that you can use while you're playing. And so in a sense, that music has the same type of template. Like if we were to sit down and play a tune, play All the Things You Are, and I called that tune and you said, yeah, I know that tune. Well, if we pick a key, I'm assuming we're gonna be playing the same tune. So we have a template, there's a melody, there's chord changes, and we would play that tune, but the whole time we're improvising. Because I could play it as a two-feel, I could play it as we could play a bossa nova, I could drop out at the bridge and let you and the bass player take it if you were playing piano, right? So there's that element of improvisation with that template in that music. And because of my background in that music, and because I realized very early on that Blue Man was such a unique vehicle for the musicians, in that, you know, in all of the other theater I've ever played, you're mostly trying to follow the instructions of the composer, right? There's dynamics on the page, there's this, that, and the other thing, you've got a conductor, there's all this information that you are processing that is coming from a third party that molds your performance. So the sheet music and its instructions, also the conductor. And then of course your ears are always open and you're balancing with your fellow ensemble mates, right? But in Blue Man, to me, there's opportunity to improvise everywhere. Like the choice to play something a certain volume is a choice you get to make in that show. And the band could purposely play something slower or faster or with less forward energy or more laid back, and that's just because that's what that moment, that night called for. It called for us to play that loud, even though normally we play it soft or louder or more edgy, or all of these small minutiae are really, they're parsed, and they're not only parsed in the moment while we're reacting to the story on stage, because that's really the goal, is to improvise within the template to create a sonic accompaniment or a sonic landscape for the characters to exist in. But we're also parsing what happened in the show later in the dressing room. And that's some of the most interesting and intense conversation. For me, the important term, and this term was like used a lot in my training with Jeff Quay in Chicago, who trained me and so many other people. The word was authenticity, authentic. In other words, the goal is to be authentic to what's happening on the stage. And if you do that, as most good artists can do, the audience believes you. They believe that that's what was supposed to happen, even though we didn't even know what was going to happen, but we reacted in such a way that was authentic. And I would say that of all of the goals of a music director, I think in Blue Man, that's kind of the ultimate one, is to be able to command your position authentically, but also, you know, to allow other people to make choices, because it's not always the drummer's choice of where to go. You know, sometimes it's the zither player who starts that melody or starts that piece, and so they're setting the tempo. And so you know, in improvisation they often call it yes and, but that person has offered that tempo and that vibe, so you take it and you contribute, you champion it, you hold it up and say, yeah, that's hip. Okay, now I'm gonna do this, and you try to make it better. And sometimes making it better means not doing anything and just laying out because it's good already, you know. So sometimes in Blue Man, the most important urge to resist is the urge to play something. Like when the Blue Men do something, well, you could play something to put an exclamation point on it, but like if the crowd's already laughed their ass off about it and they've had that moment and it's gone, just let it go. It was good.
What do you think, Amy? What's your observation of Blue Man on the ship?
So one of the coolest things that I got to do was shadow some of the crew. I come from a almost strictly musical theater background, some church music, mostly musical theater. Like you do the musical the way that the book says, you know? So it was super cool. Having seen Blue Man many times, to see it from the back, from the way that the crew sees it, from running a marshmallow here and like having to go to this audience member at this exact time and making sure, you know, I was following this woman named Alex, who's amazing. She allowed me to shadow her one day. I think she was deck 2 or 3 maybe. And she ran around for 90 minutes straight. And it was so fun. And then at the end, I got to go on stage and bow with the cast, with my husband. And I'd never gotten to do that before. And that's just, as a, you know, nerdy theater person, not an opportunity that I would get anywhere else, truly. And Blue Man is such a different thing from theater, normal theater, as I would say. A different and unique situation. So that was really cool. I got to shadow the stage manager as well. She was the stage manager for Blue Man and for Legends. So I got to see her work on both of those and how different they were, how unique Blue Man is, and just there's really no comparison to it. So I've probably seen it 200 times and it's always different. People are on vacation. It's not like, oh, we're just gonna go see Blue Man in Chicago tonight. We're on a cruise and we're gonna go saunter into this theater here and see what's up.
It's just a different,
it's a party over
it's
there.
a different atmosphere, it's a different culture, you know, and you have people from so many cultures.
Yeah.
I think the coolest thing about the culture, the group of people, artists, and all of us, you know, spouses, everyone included, is okay. So yeah, I'm the drummer in Blue Man Group, and EJ is the guitarist and zither player in Blue Man Group. But like, everybody is good at all these other things, and like we all ended up collaborating in all sorts of other ways. Like we all had a band together. By we, I mean all of us, the Blue Man people, and all of our spouses, and musicians from other shows. And music would just happen, and we'd go to the winery and people would just make music, and other people were musicians and also visual artists and designers and had all sorts of other talent. And like that was the cool part, because of that like tight environment, and because of the separation, the social separation. Like we had crew bar, you know, that was really where we could go and like let loose. And so you really get to know like people, because they're at their most vulnerable, they're at their most honest when you're just that small.
Yeah, you would watch
Right.
that Cirque show, like how are they doing this every day?
Tell us about how you got started and why you love theater.
That's a really good question. I've never really thought about that before. I always was a singer. I came from a singing family. When I was a child, my dad had a recording studio in the basement, and he would record himself singing the Beatles. And my mom would sing in the car with me and taught me how to use my ear. And my mom is killer at harmony. And my grandparents sang, all of them, all 4 of them. So it just was always that's very normal to me. And I think I did my first like a show in the 4th grade at church, like a little church musical about Jesus. I did a few of those, and then I did start doing theater sophomore year of high school. The director like found me in the hallway and said, you should come and audition for this, and I didn't really understand what it was or what I was doing. And my first show was the Pajama Game, and I loved every second of it. And I realized like, oh, you could sing and you can also act and play and dance, and you can be other characters, and everybody's really fun. And the theater was a place where I found friends and people that were weird and interesting. And I went to college, and I did not major in theater because I didn't think that I was good enough, honestly. So I took some classes. I would say that I have a minor in musical theater based on the plethora of classes that I took in the department. When I went to college, I was so young. Thinking back, like, that's half my life ago. I was 17, 18 years old. I had no idea who I was or what I was really good at, and I went to a small high school, and I was an only child, and like, who am I? What am I good at? And what do I like to do? And I thought in my mind, you're going to college. There are people in this college who are majoring in musical theater because they want to be an actor and they want to go try to be a star, and like, God bless, like, good for you, but I don't think that I can do that. You know, I wasn't a good dancer, and I just thought, like, I have not put the time into like becoming that person that could go full hardcore, like, let's do theater. I also kind of had my parents' voices in my head, like, you need to get a real job, you need to get a degree in something that
Really common.
you get a job in, which, for the record, I have a psychology degree, so
There you go. So you can
I'm paying
explain to
for it.
us.
What's wrong with me? She can
Still
explain
paying
what's wrong
for
with
it.
me.
You
Don't
can
use
explain
it.
to us what stuff that our parents told us are still to this
Exactly.
day. Yeah.
So anyway, to answer your question, it wasn't until I was in my 30s and I had kids where I was like, why am I not fucking doing theater?
Maybe not kids, but like 10 years ago, you turned to me and you were like, I want a stage manager, director.
Well, yeah, like, I've always loved theater. I don't want to be anything else. I don't want to do any of these other things. Like, why? And now I sort of feel like, I should have started then, but I wasn't emotionally prepared. I wasn't mentally there.
So the album is called What Times Is It? And the name of the band or the artist is The Times 2.
Amy, do you sing on the album?
Very much, yes.
She's all over it.
Yes.
You're on like,
I'm on over half.
you're
of the
like
tracks.
on 9 out of 13 songs.
Only because I insisted. Because in the beginning, Jesse and Dave were like, "We're making this record, and we're gonna be the only ones who sing on it." And I was like,
hate
"Did you know
singing.
that there are girls in the world? Not all children are boys, and they need to hear their own female voice on their children's record." And so I forced them to let me put harmony on the record, and we're so glad that
no,
I did.
it's true. No, and then there was an issue with the tracks on the record where two tunes,
Some of them weren't great.
well, yeah, some of them weren't
Some
great,
of them
but
weren't great.
we took a lot of instruction, and this also kind of goes along with what you said about the musical, which I know we'll talk about, which is that this was too an assignment. Educators have like a complicated identity often, and music educators have even more complex identities because at one part, they're artists. They are musicians. They aspire to be as great as they can be at their craft, at their art. And on the other hand, they're professional educators. And so there's a whole nother set of tools and techniques and things that come along with being as good as you can be at that. And so for me, there's always been this balancing act of like being on tour with Blue Man full time and being on tour and being like, man, I really missed the classroom. And what I've learned about myself is that I'm an educator first. And it took a long time to be able to say that.
With 10, replace the number.
2 nonprofits that I work for. One is based in Chicago. It's called the Jazz Education Network, and it is a global nonprofit, international nonprofit. It's this large family, this community of people, and my role there is the director of membership and marketing. The other nonprofit is called the Source for Learning. It's the oldest education technology nonprofit in America. We wanted to give teachers and students empowerment. We have certifications from the FCC that is a safe harbor for children. And the whole purpose of this company was to affect good change in young people with social media.
Magic trick to mess with your brain. You just
I think the most important thing, and it's super cliche and it's cheesy, but you have to find your purpose. During this time, my purpose has been to help other teachers and to like nurture my family because we've been home. And it's hard to see that shift in your purpose immediately, and it takes time and patience with yourself and the other people around you. And, you know, like we took a drive today in the forest and saw the colors in the Blue Ridge Parkway. And, you know, it's like, it's those moments when all the work is gone and you're in the woods with your family where your purpose is really clear.
There comes a time in your
Rise, Sunday morning, read the headlines.
Jesse was teaching at Marshall University, and they had said, we think we might want to have a show written, an original piece, maybe something about the university, maybe something about the history of the town. And our friend Beth Wolf said, that's Jesse Nolan, he can do that for you. In addition, at the same time, the president of the university sort of nerding out about John Marshall and also Hamilton at the same time, because that was around when Hamilton came out. And he was realizing that John Marshall was around at the same exact time as all of the main characters in Hamilton, but he's really not mentioned in Hamilton. The president of the university felt that John Marshall sort of deserves his own Hamilton, that he's just as interesting of a character.
There was a big story to tell. So Marshall University, our namesake is John Marshall, the great Chief Justice, the longest serving Chief Justice in the history of the court, responsible for one of the most foundational and precedent-setting decisions in the history of the Supreme Court, which is Marbury versus Madison, which establishes the precedent of judicial review. Judicial review is the process by which the Supreme Court gets to determine whether or not actions taken by the other two branches of government or by a lower court are constitutional. That power is not set within the Constitution.
We spent 10 days, like I came in and we spent 10 almost full days, like deep into the project. But regardless of all that, like 10 days where in the map of this project, it was like 10 days. And then within a month of those 10 days that we wrote it, the show was happening.
We had
So these two
we had
did
4 months to
like
go from
these two did
nothing
so much,
to
but like
a show.
together we like produced the show. Like we came up with the concept. We was like, oh, it's gonna be a newspaper that
Staging,
flashes by,
concept,
like
yeah.
we're all there, but Amy comes together and she's like, okay, well, let me just pick the pieces together. This is what you meant,
This
right?
goes
And we're
here.
like, yes, that is. I think we were all working together. Like it was like, do you think this would be cool to be on stage? Like I think we all came up with like how it looked and how it felt in the flow. Like we mapped it out. Amy is there as me and Jesse are just like spitting out ideas. I feel like I'm an ideas person.
You are an ideas
But
person.
Amy had like marker in hand, dry erase board. When she says she's supporting, it's like, no, she is the support. Like she's the frame of the building. When it comes to collaboration, you think this is like our first project. Like our first project probably goes back till 10 years ago, and we had a fundraiser, and Jesse's like,
God, I forgot about that.
I wrote all this music. Like, can the group of 10 of you who are currently friends, like that we all met, can like sing these songs that I just like collab together? There's something that happens when we all work together and we are passionate about an idea. That is something that artists do. That it really works. Like when you find those good collaborators, you find that vibe, you really can't go wrong. I think it's about finding that spark. Like when you're actually feeling creative, you like sort of hone in on that. It's about finding those times that you are like, oh, this really works. And also stopping and thinking, I'm vibing on this. Like, let's not, I have ADHD, or at least I was diagnosed with it when I was younger, but it's about honing in on those ideas and like, whoa, I'm actually feeling like I could write this song right now. Like, let me just like write these words down. I heard this earlier and I'm also afraid of this about like putting your material out there, because then you'll be judged for it, but no one's gonna know how good it is until it's out there. Start writing down your ideas, you know, that's the first step. I would probably just share my favorite quote, which is something I think about all the time, which is, the love in your heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. What you give with every piece you create. I feel like everything that has been created between us comes across very well because it is full of love and that collaboration and that joy of being able to do it together.
No, I'm not gonna cry.
And you'll start to multiply by 7.